People in China can't agree whether this dress truly represents China, and today we're going to be making a modern version of one. But first, it's time for our history lesson. What is qipao, where was it invented, and why is it so controversial? To understand this, we have to start in China. So in China, the majority of the people are this ethnicity called Han. And for a period of time, there was this ethnic minority called the Manchu people who conquered China and ruled over it for a couple hundred years. I would compare the length of it to about how long the United States will last. Aside from political and economic changes, the Manchu leaders also implemented a bunch of cultural shifts. For instance, banning a bunch of Han Chinese cultural practices, forcing all the men to adopt the traditional Manchu hairstyle, and making the traditional Manchu robe the official outfit for the officials. The style of clothing you wore back then was really important because instead of reflecting the latest trends and what looks good on you, it reflected someone's cultural heritage and where they came from. Every ethnicity and region had different styles of clothing. Now back to the common people. I mean, it's the understatement of the century, but because the Manchu leaders were so busy enforcing their ideas onto the Han people, the Han population felt that their culture was being overridden. On top of that, there had been political tension between these two groups for so many years, and even today, some people in China still blame the Qing dynasty and its Manchu leaders for some of the political and international defeats that China faced in the years after the Qing dynasty fell. So for a lot of people in China, these traditionally Manchu clothing and their derivatives don't feel like they truly represent what Chinese traditional clothing is about, especially when you consider that 90% of the population is not ethnically Manchu. After 268 years, the Manchu-led Qing dynasty finally fell. That didn't mean that everyone just stopped wearing their garments. Instead, people started remixing them and making them fit the times. In the 1920s, tailors in Shanghai began to modernize the fit of these traditionally Manchu robes, making them more fit for everyday wear in a city. And that brings us to today. The qipao is continuously reinvented and redesigned by fashion brands, major designers, and people named Jennifer who have too much time on their hands. The qipao is actually a deceptively simple garment. It doesn't have a lot of embellishments or components, so when you choose the fabric, you really have to choose the right one because it's gonna do all the work. I love natural fibers and I wanted something durable yet special, so I went with silk. So first, I bought 2,000 boiled silkworms on Craigslist. Just kidding. I went to China because everything's made in China. I actually found this store totally on accident. 2 years ago in Beijing, I noticed this old heritage store in the middle of a tourist trap street, and it turns out that this store is known around the country for their craftsmanship and silk fabrics. They had an entire wall of beautiful cloth with these really dazzling patterns. Whee! I tested a few draping ideas, but the fabric was just so thick. I thought it would be best if I kept the design sleek and minimal. I wanted it to be a midi-length, figure-skating dress with a mandarin collar that ends in a halter neck because I hate cap sleeves. And I know I'm missing a lot of the important elements of a traditional qipao like the buttons and the side slits, but I won't need them. After this, I printed out a free pattern for a basic shift dress. I think it's a good starting point for a dress that has darts. I modified this pattern to cut off the shoulders and add some extra neck to have a place to attach my own collar later. So I've laid out this dress that I want to mimic the length of. I put my pattern on the dress and I have to add this much more. I'm going to take these extra pattern pieces and draw in the length of the hem that I need. Working with silk fabric was kind of slippery, so I used some tracing paper to cut out the pattern. I sandwiched the fabric with these papers and pinned it in place so that I wouldn't be shifting the fabric each time I cut it. To add on to the difficulty, bias cut silk is beautiful because it drapes really fluidly and hugs the body, but it also stretches and shifts and refuses to act normal. Since we're sewing on the bias, this next part required me to use all my brain cells. I put the pattern pieces along the bias and flipped the back pattern piece so it was biasing the opposite way. It's important to do this because if the bias of the front and back align, then the dress will twist all around you every time you wear it. Did you think you were done learning? It's time for a quick math lesson. Okay. So on a piece of cloth, there's the warp and the weft, and the bias goes diagonally to this. You can think of the bias direction of the silk like vector fields that point in the direction the silk wants to move in due to the orientation and structure of the fibers. When you wear it, two opposite vector fields joined at the seam will oppose each other during small movements like walking. This would keep your garment in place relative to your body. But if the two vector fields add up and point the same way, then the dress will continuously twist uncomfortably while you move. Okay, so after I cut the pattern pieces out, I measured where the darts would be on the fabric and started pinning. Afterward, I started sewing along all the lines of the paper, and this is where I messed up. I got so in the zone that I forgot there was fabric between the papers I was sewing. So after I finished a dart, I accidentally trapped the paper inside the dart. I had to open a few darts back up and use tweezers to get the pieces of paper out from inside them.
No! God, please, no!
After a while, I realized that the paper was annoying me more than it was helping, so I just ripped it all off and kept going. After I sewed up the darts on the sides, it basically became one giant slippery tube. Then I had to figure out how to make the collar. I drafted it freehanded by looking at some pictures of shirt collar patterns online. And what's that thing they say, do it nice or do it thrice? Yeah, I had to draft the collar and remake it 3 times. My first attempt was way too tall. Then I tried to get smart and reuse the fabric by cutting away the seam allowance and trying again, but this time it was so thin it might as well have been a shoelace. I just started over with some new fabric and made sure to use a medium amount, and finally it was just right. And then I had to attach the collar to the main part of the dress. Okay, I really need a dress form. I've clipped this here and I've taped this here, and now I'm going to add the collar. So this is kind of where I want the dress to sit. I'm going to attach it symmetrically and then take this in. We should be halfway there. This is what it looked like when the collar was sewn to the front of the dress. I put the dress back on to see where to attach the collar to the back. I added 2 clasps on the inside collar piece, and after I finished, this is what the dress looked like.
Okay, you can go. Oh, yes.